Yes, indeed.
The stars at night are big and bright, deep in the heart of Texas.
Genevieve, what town actually in Texas are you from?
I am from Texarkana, which is a city. It's half of it is in Texas, and half of it is in Arkansas. It's right. It's on the border, but not the border most people think of.
Right, right, exactly. Okay, I just was wondering about that. I was reminded of Waylon Jennings in the Luckenbach, Texas song last night, and so I just wondered whether you were maybe in that area, that neck of the woods. So, all right, I have to say that watching the Democrats outside of Chuck Schumer's house last night, there's a certain level of deep satisfaction with what's happening in the Democratic Party.
Justice for Chuck, right?
Yes, yes.
Well, look, he had it coming. I saw him a clip from MSNBC, I think, yesterday as well, where Rachel Maddow saying Democrats don't understand why did you cave? I mean, look, the problem here is I just think they overplayed their hand. They went into this and they really had no cards. They had no leverage. It became very clear from the get-go that what they were demanding had nothing to do with the budget. And as it turns out, what they were demanding isn't what the majority of Americans want. The majority of Americans want their government open, and they don't want giving amnesty to people here illegally in exchange for that. That doesn't seem to be a good deal to the majority of Americans, especially Republicans and especially independents. So, look, this is what happens when somebody listens to the extreme base of their party and doesn't make good calculated. I mean, it's bad policy, but it's also turned out it's bad policy.
Well, and this is a micro version of what happened really generally in 2016. These individuals were absolutely tone deaf. They were listening to the wrong people. They thought they had this in the bag. And this is another example of where the Democrats suddenly had to learn the hard way that there are people in America who are common sense individuals who can see things for what they are. And thank God for alternative forms of media. And
right.
DailySignal.com would be a great example of that, where people are actually getting a different story than the one, well, we know CBS, ABC, NBC told, which was this is all the Republicans' fault. But most people just didn't buy it.
No, they didn't buy it. But, I mean, this I think you're right. It's what happens when you have folks who they get overtaken by their political scheme. And the reality is the left is so taken over by identity politics that I think that's frankly what forced them into this, Jamie. They really, they can't see the whole America anymore because they have chopped it up into this group versus that group versus this group, the women and the minorities and Latina. I mean, that DACA, they can't even see the Hispanic population because all they see are like DACA versus all the people standing in line who are trying to get here, for example, the right way. I mean, they don't see people in whole groups. They sparse it out. And that becomes problematic politically because we're made up of a bunch of different folks. And all those folks don't think exactly the same way because they maybe share the same color of skin or they're the same sex. I mean, we all know that. But that's not the way Democrats operate, and increasingly, frankly. So, I know we're out of the shutdown right now, but I'm not confident we're not going to be right back here come February 8th or sometime around that because I don't know. We'll see. But I don't know if Chuck Schumer and company learned their lesson.
Yeah, no doubt. Now, I talked to somebody last night on my TV show. She is a part of the young people's pro-life movement. She was up in D.C. at the time of the pro-life march up there. And, of course, this is another example of where, the attention was all given to the women's march. And very little, if any, given to the pro-life march. But that didn't stop people from attending. It was well attended and everything else. But to my point about the women's march, I don't understand what they're doing. I didn't understand the one on January 21st of 2017 and didn't understand the one last weekend. I don't know what they're after. I do know that Bill de Blasio declared that this was the anniversary this weekend of the biggest protest.
We celebrate the anniversary of the single greatest protest in the history of the United States of America.
I mean, and I would imagine, I'm just going to give the women the benefit of the doubt here. I imagine even the women at that particular event where de Blasio was speaking, they didn't even think that was the biggest protest in American history. I mean, we could name 4 or 5 of them that were important, including the March on Washington in 1963, where Martin Luther King gave his I Have a Dream speech. So I can't figure out what these people are after at these events.
Well, I mean, they're after what they've been after since Donald Trump was elected president, much to their shock and dismay. I mean, you know, and the marches and the protests have gone on and on and on ever since Election Day of 2016, and that's what the original Women's March was all about. Look, they can claim it's women's rights and whatever and all this kind of stuff, and that's fine. I'm sure some people showed up for that, but more than anything, they were trying to protest the election of Donald Trump. And that's, again, to a great extent, what many of them were here to do this last weekend. And you're right, I was at the March for Life. Very few media out there covering that. And again, you know something is like really embedded in the American public's, psyche, and it's important to them when they keep showing up. I mean, year after year this has gone on, Jamie. I think this is the 44th or 45th year of the March for Life, where every year people show up, whether it's cold, whether it's snowing, doesn't matter. They show to stand up for life. The folks, and so they're for something. The march, the Women's March that you've seen, it's against everything. And if you ask the people there what they're marching against, you get, a lot of different answers. Donald Trump, the environment, they're marching for the environment. They're marching against the destruction of women's rights, and they're marching for abortion rights. I mean, it's a hodgepodge of folks who, frankly, just don't like the president and don't like anything that would be considered conservative. And so they all come together under the banner of the Women's March.
Are women's rights threatened? I don't understand. I don't really.
I don't understand it either.
Okay.
I mean, as the president, tweeted out just this last week, I think on the day of the march, glad everybody's out, for one of the best economic times for women in the history of the country. I mean, and it's true. It's not just women. It's everybody.
Yeah.
But they don't talk about that. The media doesn't talk about that. And the media coverage is so distorted. I mean, the amount of time that all the big networks gave to the Women's March versus the March for Life, it's unbelievable. I mean, you could check out Newsbusters, Media Research Center, that they watch and
right.
They clock it, how much time they give. It's unbelievable, the disparity.
Yeah, and I think at this point now, even as I told the woman I talked to yesterday, we've gotten to the point where we honestly almost don't have to care about the kind of coverage. We've come to expect that kind of coverage from the networks, but we have a different path, as evidenced by the election of President Trump and as evidenced by the cutting through of common sense that seems to have reached at least some important parts of our society and culture. So we're getting there. Genevieve Wood, thank you so much. Great talking to you. We just have sealed the deal to bring you here in springtime, so we've got another thing. We're going to make a formal announcement with you and Jim Carafano and Jim Talent, so we're really looking forward to seeing you here. I know last time you couldn't make it, but this time, God willing, you will. And so
I booked my flight yesterday.
Oh, good. Fantastic. Well, we're looking forward to seeing you, Genevieve, and thanks a lot for today.
Thank you, Jamie.
Right.
Have a good one.
You too. At Genevieve Wood, heritage.org, dailysignal.com. Yeah, it's gotten to the point where now we could complain all we want about relative media coverage, but I don't think we have to be really that concerned about it like we used to have to be. Because times, they are a-changing.